Welcome to the Filmed Live Musicals podcast, a podcast about stage musicals that have been legally filmed and publicly distributed. The Filmed Live Musicals website contains information on nearly 200 musicals that have been captured live. Check it out at filmedlivemusicals.com. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the Filmed Live Musicals podcast. I'm your host, Luisa Lyons, and my guest today is Brett Sullivan, the London-based Australian director, producer, and founder of Steam Motion and Sound, a production company that creates captures of live productions, music videos, EPKs, documentaries, trailers, and TV programs. Brett was the director behind the captures of Love Never Dies, Billy Elliot, Miss Saigon, Newsies, Kinky Boots, Les Mis for the BBC's The One Show, Stephen Sondheim's Old Friends, Waitress, and the upcoming Prince of Egypt and Aladdin. He was a producer of Les Mis at the O2, Phantom of the Opera at the Royal Albert Hall, and the Jesus Christ Superstar Arena Tour. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
So excited to have you. The list there is some of my favorite captures, and it's so excited to go behind the scenes with you. To start us off with, what made you fall in love with musical theatre?
I fell into that very accidentally, to be brutally honest. When we set up in London, Steam was originally from Sydney, and then we went to London, and we were kind of, my business partner, Clayton Jacobson, and I were there on a very lovely April day in Soho, which is like that one day of the year where everything turns and everyone comes out and drinks outside the pubs and strips off and sits in the parks. And we thought, wow, this is really great. Years later, we realized that those sort of days are very rare in London. But we thought, let's set up a production.
Celsius.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh my God, it's hot.
It's exactly. But the vibe was great. And we thought, let's set up Steam here as well. And we were primarily working for music companies, so working for record companies and artists, and our business was really music videos and music commercials and so forth. But we did shoot a promo for Dirty Dancing musical in London, and a few people noticed that because we approached it quite differently. In the sense that we shot it almost like a music video. We were very close, used moving cameras, and that was kind of our instinct to do it that way, rather than a traditional live broadcast where the cameras would be at the back of the room. So a few people noticed that, and then Wicked called in Germany, and we did that, and then it kind of really took off. So our music over kind of a 10-year period went from being, like 5% musical theatre to being 95% musical theatre across Broadway, the London's West End, and Australia, Canada, Germany, really the other markets that we would work in.
What was the impetus to start Steam in the first place back when you were in Sydney?
Adventure, really, to kind of all my favorite bands came from England. I used to play in a band. We toured England, so I wanted to go back. I think that it's the romance of it. So yeah, we kept Steam running in Sydney, and Clayton went over first, and we actually did all the post-production in Sydney while we were setting up our kind of facility in London for about the first year. And then I went over and we kind of just got more people involved and built the business from there. But really it was kind of the challenge of it, and also the opportunity to work with artists and musicians that we probably would not have got in Sydney. So that was really impetus of it. And it's close to New York. So that was the other place we wanted to just work in. But fundamentally, like most people kind of leaving their hometown or whatever, it's the sense of adventure and trying something new. And it was always, let's try it for 3 years. But I've been there for almost 18 now.
Did you study film and or music prior to starting the businesses?
Well, music only from the sense that I never studied it, but I played it from like 14 years old in a band, and that really was a huge part of what made up my day, so to speak. The film side of things, yes, I did study it at the University of Technology in Sydney, and but it was actually more so from a computer graphics point of view. So I was very much interested in computer graphics, and I wrote a book about computer graphics way back when the whole idea of desktop video or editing video on a personal computer was kind of really unheard of then, and everything was with videotape and so forth. So this is early 90s. So I was really interested in tech, and computer graphics was a huge part of that. And Steam really was built on motion graphics. So the animation, motion graphics, and nonlinear editing, which was the term used back then. So yeah, after I left uni, I was working quite heavily as a freelancer in computer graphics.
What led to that love for tech and that interest in tech?
My business partner, Julian Chow in Sydney, who I'm still a business partner with, we were just into computers, just nerds, really, and what you could do with it. And we knew that, I mean, this is kind of when the internet was a new thing as well, or just coming in. We're very early adopters. We actually built a whole business on replacing tape in Australia. So you would send files digitally and not by a videotape, which is the way that you would send commercials across a country as big as Australia. And you know, in the US, that's how the whole world did it.
This was AdStream?
This was AdStream, and then that was quite a heavy tech infrastructure, and then that launched in the UK and through Europe. So that tech side of things really informed even the way Steam does business. Is that together with Clayton, particularly, as it really runs a lot of the tech in Steam in London, and we're always interested in technology and how we can do things, you know, quicker, faster, but also predominantly better. You know, how it can help us. So the whole advent of AI coming into the discussion now is a very interesting one, and we're certainly looking very closely at its threat to the business, but also how we can harness some of the things that it actually does that can improve our workflow, make our things better, and how it affects the products that we make for clients. So yeah, that's another whole discussion though. The AI one, yeah.
I know it's like a can of worms, but I'm very curious what you think will be the advantages of AI in capturing live theater.
Look, there are obvious tech advantages in the sense that even things like this sounds very mundane, but it's very actually quite important. You know, wigs. You know, actors on stage, a lot of times they're wearing wigs and they have a massive wig line across the front of their forehead. And it's not designed for film. It's designed for taking wigs on and off very quickly throughout a show. And when you're in the audience, you don't really see the wig lines. But when you're close up on a camera, it's quite ghastly, you know, and those wig lines essentially need to be painted out. So, you know, 10 years ago, we would rotoscope these things out, which is kind of hand frame by frame, painting these wig lines out because we just wanted it to, you know, we don't want to see those wig lines. And then tech got quicker. And now with AI, you know, you kind of AI kind of plugins with stuff, you can really kind of select an area and go, that's the bit I want to smooth out essentially. And it really is so much faster, like 100 times faster. So there's sort of things where AI as kind of a tech or a plugin, as you would call it in the editing software, is really useful. Extending shots where there is no information, you know, like if I want to, like when we did Aladdin, we actually wanted the set to be bigger than it was on the big wide shots. And it doesn't exist in real life, but we wanted to kind of get rid of the wings. So that's where we say, okay, this is the bit we want to duplicate wider. Now, it's kind of easy to do that on a still frame in Photoshop, but to do it with moving video is a lot more of a heavy lift. So that's kind of where, and you kind of see it with Photoshop, kind of generate fill sort of situations now, but you want to do that in video. So they're the sort of things that are going to be very useful for us, but they're all post-production tools. Taking vocals or isolating vocals out of a mix, things like that in audio. You know, quite often we tune those vocals to help them out a little bit. And sometimes the audio may be completely baked in, whereas the vocals are not separate. We can kind of lift that stuff out now where we couldn't really do that 3 or 4 years ago. Wow, so they're the real advantages of it. Yeah.
Wow. So I have I kind of don't know where to start. There's so many things I want to dive into. When you're doing like a live broadcast versus say Waitress was the most recent release, where you film it and then go into post-production and then release it later in cinema or on streaming. How does the way you approach a capture change from doing a live broadcast versus knowing that you're going into post-production?
I think there are two kind of things. There's what we would call live, which is mean as you are filming it, it's actually being simulcast out to cinemas via satellite. So that's like true live. That would be like live television, effectively. So that's live. And Billy Elliot was one that did that, and a few others. Then there is where as live was kind of what it would be called, where you pre-record it, you edit it all, then it goes to cinemas just as a release. So, but that has gone through a whole post-production chain before it actually goes out there. Now, the live stuff, like Billy Elliot, for example, you're in a truck effectively hooked up to a satellite and you're calling the 17 or whatever it is cameras on the fly. So quite frankly, that's terrifying. And and I've done that several times. Actually, Sondheim was another one. But it's not my preferred way to work. Live directing is a live kind of broadcast director is a real specific skill set. And like, the Tonys or, the Academy Awards or something like that, it's really on the fly at the moment. And it requires quite a lot of rehearsal. I would say a lot of rehearsal. But it's certainly something that I've done. I'm less in my comfort zone, that's for sure. But also your shots are massively restricted. So you can't get the close-ups that you want filmically. It's more akin to live television in that sense. So you can't quite get it the same way. So, and I much prefer kind of setting shots up, kind of getting into the eyes of characters. Now, I know you can get into the eyes of characters on a long lens on a live broadcast, but actually looks very different to actually the camera being physically close to someone. So, it's a very different thing rather than a long lens where it looks flatter. When you're actually physically close to someone, it's a very different look. And that's what we try and get, when we do. So, yes, to answer the question, they're very different beasts, very different challenges. Yes.
I think what you're talking about, that the close-ups and like being like right up next to the actor when you're filming them, I think that's something that your captures do so beautifully. I feel like you really get into the psychology of the lead actors in a way that the live, like you're saying, I feel like the live you get a sense of the bigger picture more easily, because obviously the shots have to be pulled back. But with the as live, you're able to like really get into the emotions of the characters and feel, I don't know, I feel like I understand the characters in a different way than if I'd seen it in person, because I have that close up that I don't have when I'm in person.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And that's what we try to do, really, is that, what we do is a bit of a bastard format. It's like a hybrid between cinema and live. And, going back to Stop Making Sense, Jonathan Demme, who shot that, is that when I first saw that, and I was like 13 years old when I saw that, and I walked out of there going, hey, I love Talking Heads anyway, but it was like, how did he get so close? Like, how did he get so close to the musicians? And it was a seamless cut between what was live and what was set up. And that is the trick, is to go from that the audience never knows when it was from a live show or when it's from a setup shot. So the lighting must match, the audio must match, and also just the basic movement must match for continuity. So I loved what Stop Making Sense did, that I could get close to the action with a camera on stage. And then, well, how do we do that in theater? So, a lot of theater actors are also film actors, so they can understand and you temper their kind of performance to how close the camera is. If you're shouting out at the back of the room but the camera's 2 feet away from you, 3 feet away from you, it feels a bit weird. It feels too big for the shot. So things where we have to pull it back a bit to make it read correctly in terms of its intensity. So all those things we kind of go through when we kind of work out how to shoot that scene and the level that actor would play it at. But for me, it's always about the eyes, and when we did Billy Elliot, we did do a run of setups, and Stephen Daldry is the director of Billy Elliot and obviously a, film director. He just said once to me, it's in the eyes, just look for the eyes. And I never forgot that note. And that was a really important note. So they're the things that, how do we get into that? Because that's where you read the actor's emotion. And it's funny, you can go see a live show, but you can just about see their eyes, but all of a sudden when you see it up close for the same show, it's like, you can really get that emotion playing for you.
Mm. How closely are you working with the stage director to create the different setups and the different shots and like what the final film is going to look like?
In varying degrees. So it depends also that if we've worked together before, they tend to let us just get on with it. So in terms of and also some stage directors like Stephen Daldry, and Sam Mendes, Baz Luhrmann, I've worked with, they know how to make a film, so that's very daunting to work for those stage directors who are also obviously huge film directors. But at the same time, they were very gracious enough to kind of let us get on with it and understood that this was our kind of, core skill set. Plus, we move a lot quicker than, say, a film set does, like a drama film set does. And Baz Luhrmann, like Stephen Daldry, did give me a note of, and he was there the whole time we did Strictly Ballroom down in Sydney a few years ago. And he said, be bold. Like I was setting up camera moves and he went faster, be bold. And I never forgot that, as in terms of, yes, he's right, because it looks way better when I did it like that faster. So all that kind of information informs everything obviously after. But those kind of notes that you get from people who are legends, well, to me, legends in the industry, have really informed the work we do. And it's been so lucky to work alongside them, obviously, but terrifying at the same time when you deliver the edits to them for their notes. But we've been very lucky that it's always been pretty good. So yeah.
What do you do to prepare for a shoot when you find out, okay, Newsies wants to film, Waitress wants to film? What happens next?
So we record a scratch of it, which is literally from the back of the room of the show. We go see the show, obviously, a few times probably. And I mean, if we're doing it's a very different approach if we're filming a full version, full live capture of it, compared to filming a trailer. So in a trailer, we would just shoot in one day and shoot a show. The focus of it is quite different. So it's about moments, and pace. Those cameras are moving pretty quick, and you're trying to get attention in 30 seconds or 60 seconds or less. Whereas the full-length version, everything is much more measured in terms of the camera flow and movement. You can't, otherwise it'd be like a promo for 2 hours. So it's a very different approach. But effectively, if it's a trailer or whatever, we go through and we look at the things that we like visually, what the big songs are. And then we just shoot moments. So we very rarely shoot full songs. We would just shoot moments, 30 seconds here, 30 seconds there. And we end up with a shot list or a scene list, so to speak. And once that's agreed, I just then map out the camera moves. So it's like if I have 3 or 4 cameras on a setup, I just work out what each camera is doing for every single take and what the lens would going to be and where they're going to be. It's all absolutely worked out. We never would arrive without a very, very specific plan in place. And because that's what films are, it's expensive to do this, it's expensive to shoot. So and the clock is ticking. So, and you can never go over time in a theater because they got a show to do that night or whatever. It can't even be like a film set or a music video where you can go over time. You just can't in a theater. So you absolutely have to nail it and be very prepared. When it comes to the long format versions, again, it's all broken into scenes. We do the same thing. We break it into each thing as how many takes we're going to need for each of it. Then it's across how many days we need. But there's a whole lot of other stuff that happens even before there, which is pre-recording the orchestra and pre-recording vocals and all these other things that come into play in post-production. And in terms of how involved the stage director is, It's usually a matter of, this is what I'm going to do, and what do you think? And then they go, oh, if they kind of, it's like, yep, I'm fine. And usually it's just because we've worked together. I'll leave it up to you, get on with it. Or they go, hey, I've got an idea about X, Y, Z. Then we just work out how we can achieve their idea of X, Y, Z. Because invariably we will reblock these scenes as well for cameras. So, and that's working with a choreographer to reblock it for cameras. And once everyone sees it on the monitors, they understand why you reblock. Go, oh, it actually is better for the cameras. It's not better for the show if you're sitting in the audience, but it's better for the cameras. And likewise, Clayton, who is our DOP, relights the entire show. So every cue is relit. So, and that's a huge factor in what it looks like. Yeah. So if you just point a camera at a stage, it's basically people in a black hole. It's if you have to relight it so it looks on camera what it looks like on stage. If you actually sat in the audience and looked at a relit film set, it looks pretty ugly, but it looks right on camera. And that's what you have to do.
So how does that work for something like Billy Elliot, where it is broadcast live? How does the lighting work in that instance?
It's all relit. The whole show is relit. So the audience will watch a show that looks a bit weird. But to be honest with you, they may not even know. They certainly have never seen the show. But things will be brighter. Things will be, darker as well. So all the highlights, the spots are brought down because cameras just can't handle that latitude. No matter how good they are now, they just can't handle it. So we have to temper all that. And it's all relit every time.
And like you say, that the average person probably doesn't realize all the lighting people in the audience might, but the average person.
The lighting people definitely would, yes. Yes. And I think it's if there's a situation where you haven't worked with that lighting designer or associate before, obviously they're protective of everything they've designed because they've put their heart into this and sweat into this for months or even years in projects to get it to where it is, and now you want to walk in and change it. But really the changes we are making are to honor what it looks like on camera. It's not reinventing a look. It's just saying we need to tweak this, and
translating it from stage to film, literally.
Exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that this form that you're creating is kind of like a bastard between theatre and film. And this is something I usually ask in my kind of lightning round. But what should we call this thing that is the result of theatre meets film?
I call them live films myself, but I've heard them called live captures and pro shots, which pro shot sounds funny to me, but I just call them live films because it's something that happens live on stage and it is a film. So for me, that's where it falls. That's where I feel comfortable with it. Yeah. And describing it, but it's its own form, and for better or worse, it has a lot of pluses, but it's never going to replace being in a theater live. It just is never going to do that. But I think as soon as you get past that and realize it's not designed to do that, you can actually get the best out of it. You can make something new of it. Something that you couldn't achieve by sitting in the audience. And you see all these other things you just don't see. And what I love is shoot what the ensemble do. Like, the staging is designed, a spotlight is designed to feature someone at a particular point in time. But in film storytelling, it's all the other reactions that go on in the background that creates context for why this scene exists and why it should feel a certain way. So like in Billy Elliot, all the little comments in the background that happen, the little smirks, all this sort of stuff is the environment that you need to cut to make it feel true. So I think those are the kind of advantages you have with film. You can build that context by showing what the ensemble does. And so many times I just don't even know that they did that when I sat there in an audience and watched it. No matter if I watched it 5 times, I still didn't even see it until I saw it on camera. Yeah.
It is something I love about ushering and getting to see a show 8 times a week. And you just over time naturally start to look at things that, aren't the main focus. And it is really fun to discover those moments. And then that's, of course, why I love filmed live musicals, is that we can watch things over and over again and have kind of those tiny moments blown up on a big screen. That's why we do what we do. So you've you film theater all around the world. What are the differences or similarities but in filming between like Australia, the US, and the UK?
Oh, they're all very, very similar, to be honest with you. Like if a production is going to one country to the other, they literally are carbon copies. They,
Mm.
and the work that we had done in London even can just translate to the lighting setups. All the changes we made could literally plug and play into like in Sydney, so we can already be ahead of it when we land to film something. So they are very, very, very similar. And certainly when we shoot productions, there's the same production around the world, Moulin Rouge, Harry Potter, whatever it happens to be. They really do go to great pains to make sure it's the same experience, because that's what it's a brand. It's a show that needs to be read the same. The things that are different are just logistics. So that, I mean, working in Broadway is different than working in the West End. The unions are different. What you can do is different in the time frames. So they're just the logistics. And once you get used to how that works, then that's just the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're doing the full captures, not just the B-roll or the commercials, for commercial footage, do you find, are there more restrictions in the US? I've noticed just more captures are happening in the West End than the US. And what is the reason behind that?
Money is the single answer. It's a lot cheaper to do it in the West End, so that is really the only answer. It's as simple as that. So the pound is not particularly strong at the moment. The US dollar carries, goes a long way. So, and generally it's just cheaper anyway. Again, it's the amount of restrictions that are in the unions and so forth are just quite different. So that's why you're seeing captures happening in the UK for shows that are also running on Broadway. And then again, that may inversely flip. It just comes down to budget.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Do you think, the way you mentioned the unions, do you think that are the union restrictions in the US, do you think they're prohibitive to having captures in the first place?
No, they're not prohibitive. I mean, the unions are there to protect their members, and they protect them very well, quite frankly. They really do. And I think you have to respect that process. And once you understand the process, then that's the process, and that's the way you work within it. So, and that was a learning curve for us as well. But it's a learning curve in any place you go to, whether it's the Netherlands or Germany, whatever it is. They all have their own slightly different rules. And so that's just understanding it and respecting it. I think it's really important. And because the thing is, you have a film crew that turns up, there's 50 people that rock up, disrupt a theater, and the theater is making accommodations for us to turn up, and we have to work together to make this thing happen. And that's the thing. In a very short, compressed period of time, you have to meet and greet people, get on side with everyone. And we're all working together to make something that looks great in a really compressed period of time. So it just requires respect and collaboration. And that's what filmmaking is, except you've got not just a film crew, but a theater crew as well. And it's kind of double the ante in that respect. So no, I don't think it's prohibitive. It's just if you understand it, because the technicians here are fantastic. In New York City, it's also fantastic, like the creative teams. And that's one of the benefits of what we do. We get to work with some amazing talent, wonderful directors, choreographers, lighting designers, sound designers, and they just travel the world and work on these shows. And when you're working with that kind of A-team level of talent, everyone wants to do great work. They want to work and just do something great. So when everyone's on the same page, it's exciting. And when you've got something good. So yeah, it's good.
What do you think? Obviously, you're working with people who are, interested in filming theatre and want it to happen. What resistance, you mentioned earlier about, it's not live theater, and it's not there to replace live theater, but there is a fear that, if we're creating captures of shows, that we're going to kill live theater. I roll my eyes at that, but it is there.
Mm.
What do you think what resistance is there in the industry to making captures of live shows beyond commercial?
I think there was way more resistance 10, 15 years ago. And I think that once the earlier ones that we had done proved a model that actually it was the inverse. The thing actually sold more tickets, or it allowed that show to go on tour. Those were the actual tangible results. Then producers started to understand, what, it's not really affecting the ticket sales. It's actually promoting it. So I think that thinking has definitely moved on. The only resistance to it is how much it costs to do. At the end of the day, and whether you can get a return on it, for a producer and get a return on it. So these things are not particularly cheap to do. I mean, there's the kind of people that the authors of it, then there's the talent, then obviously the crews, and then there's the whole filming side of it. So it all does add up. And if you're a big product, your Wickards and your Hamiltons, your Les Mises and that sort of stuff, yes, you've got the kind of the base there to sustain it. But if you're emerging, then you potentially have to think of other ways to do it, or to shoot outside of Broadway, or somehow reduce the cost of making these things. I think that's the biggest barrier to entry. I think that filming, I like the idea. The thing that excites me is making it accessible for more people. Like, theater is really expensive. Like, tickets are really expensive, and if you're choosing a show, you really have to make, it's a big thing. Which one do I go see? Particularly if you're taking a family. But the idea of potentially having these things streaming and makes it much more accessible for people to watch, and much cheaper. So that side of things, I think, opens up theatre to people that may otherwise have not gotten. They may live in regional centres and not get to see a Broadway show, or there's financial implications, whatever it is. But streaming it is something that people can afford to do, to watch. I like that opportunity a lot, in terms of it getting out there. That's why I think that it becomes its own form. It's not going to replace the live experience, but it opens up accessibility to other people to watch it.
What do you think of the idea of, like, one day in the future, if every Broadway show was available to stream once a week, or if what does that look like, and do you think that will be possible?
Yeah, I've got the business models on my laptop. Those discussions were well and truly underway during lockdowns. Yeah, so I think I've got every model of permutation of that. I love the idea that anywhere in the world could tap into, a Broadway or West End show on a Saturday night. I mean, there's just a global market for that, and can tap into it. And there are definitely models to make that work. Most of the barrier for that are rights issues and talent negotiations, and these are the things. The technology is there, and certainly to do something where a theatre could be kitted out kind of permanently with cameras. It's not going to be a setup style shoot, but it's going to be something that will be still pretty good, like a live broadcast. But we're talking about convenience here. So much of our world now is just run on convenience. Like, if things are easy, people will press the button and buy it. And, I can watch Hamilton from Broadway from anywhere in the world on Saturday night. Yeah, why not? Like, that's convenience. It's all the barriers are different. It's not tech. It's just rights and talent and so forth, which, is fair enough. But hopefully I can see a situation where this would actually happen. Yeah.
That's very exciting. And what also excites me is that it's not just Broadway in the West End. It can be, how great it would be. I was so sad when they broadcast Rocky Horror live from the Theatre Royal, and it was like one night only, one cinema kind of situation.
Yep.
And I was like, no, make it international. Let us see. And that's what's so great about filming, is that we can make it international and cross borders in that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, film is forever as well. As I remind the cast when I get on stage, what we do today is there forever. So no
No
pressure.
pressure. Make it a good one.
Yeah.
No bad shows today. What has changed? We've talked a little bit about the future. What has changed over the past decade or so? There've been so many innovations with tech and with mentality as well. So what's changed over the past decade when you've been filming live theatre?
I mean, tech-wise, video projection has been the huge change. Like sets being replaced with video projection as being the kind of set. Certainly on tours in particular, but big shows, really relying on video has become a major part of productions. Lighting technology has changed immensely. It's gone into LED lighting technology, which looks different than old lighting, and unfortunately, it doesn't look better, but certainly for the cameras, but it certainly adds a huge amount of flexibility for lighting teams and moving lights. So those two things for the stage are, I think, the big kind of changing tech changes that have happened. In terms of audio, the more immersive kind of mixers that are starting to pop up, where there's just more speakers in the theater and they're able to fly things around more. Those sort of things. I think something like ABBA Voyage is like the kind of the new benchmark on what you're going to be doing with audio. And I think we're just going to see more of that being built into theaters. Dolby Atmos and these sort of kind of immersive technologies are just going to, are kind of finding their way into it now even. So those kind of tech things, we've certainly embraced from our point of view, and it's exciting what people are doing.
What do you think? What's next in terms of how we capture theatre? Is the way that you're capturing going to change based on what's becoming available?
The way that, from our point of view, camera technology has allowed us to do more. So whether the cameras are smaller, we can put them in places we couldn't put them in before. But also the way they handle light as well as improved. So the dynamic range has helped us a lot. So there's a lot in camera tech, the moving cameras as well, gimbals and telescopic cranes and so forth, that allows us to kind of try new ways of moving the camera as well. I would think that in a live capture, in a full length type of live capture, that those kind of innovations are used less, because sometimes it can be the camera is performing, and I'm not a huge fan of the camera performing, whereas the camera is the hero in something. So you have to have a really good reason to make the camera the hero. And sometimes, though, in short promo work, like we've just done a bunch of drone shoots, and Here Lies Love was like, okay, this room, we need a drone in here. It's the only way to describe how this room works is got to be on a drone. And so we flew a drone in over the audience, which, is kind of new. But it really works. Like, it has a need for it to exist. It explains it in a way no other cameras could explain it. And it's the right choice. And drone technology has got better and better and better. And the pilots have got better and better and better. These pilots are insane. They're really exciting. So I think when you see Here Lies Love footage, you'll see what I mean on how the drone was used to describe that show to an audience, like how 360 it is. It's always, and we're always on the lookout for new tech and new ways of doing things. Like, how can we make it better? Like, that's a constant conversation in the studios in London of how can we make this show better, in terms of like, how can we film it in a slightly different way? And it's always just slightly permutations along the way. It's always an evolution. If you look back at stuff that we're doing 15 years ago and you look at stuff that we're doing now, everything's a bit quicker, that sort of thing. The camera tech is better, it looks better, it's graded better. But you can't be complacent. You've always got to be looking for some new little thing that might find its place in a production, like the drone in Here Lies Love. Now was the show we could do it on. We'd been waiting for a show to make sense of something like that. But, other shows it wouldn't have made sense, but this one it does.
Did you have a live audience when you were capturing the audience with the drone, or was it the like the performers in the theater, like in an empty theater rather?
No, we had an audience in for the setups as well, because I mean that show can't really operate without an audience on that floor, and so we had probably like 500 people in for the setups during the day. So they and then of course in the evening it was a full room. Yeah. But yeah, we needed that audience, and they were great. Like the setup audience were great. Like they were really pumped up, and they just added so much vibe to the shoot. It was like being at a rave, it was like, and it was exciting. It was really good. It was really good fun.
I really hope that we get a full length capture of Here Lies Love. I would be so curious to see how that works.
Yes, I would be curious too. I was trying to drop that hint to Alex Timmers. We should do a full length version of this. We did. I mean, we did shoot a full show over multiple cameras, but I wouldn't say it was enough to release a full capture in terms of the coverage. But we certainly have a great idea of what it can look like, and it would look unique. There's no other show kind of doing what it's doing.
Yeah, it's really extraordinary, and I know a few people who would like a word with Alex Timbers regarding Beetlejuice and the lack of a capture.
Well, it's interesting you say that. We did film Beetlejuice a few times, and yeah, we have a very excellent archive, I'll call it, in the vault. Maybe one day it'll get released, but it's a it's an awesome performance by the original Broadway cast, and yeah, that's in a vault ready for a rainy day sometime, hopefully. Yeah.
Oh, the people are clamoring. So there's a huge fan base for that show.
Yeah.
Wonderful. This has just been so fascinating. This brings us to my lightning round, where I ask my favorite things, where I ask my favorite questions. These are a few of my favorite things. To start us off with, what is your favorite musical?
Oh man, you know what? It's probably Billy Elliot, because that genuinely makes me cry. Like it's when in the letter where she's singing Billy and they sing opposite each other, I thought that's just genius. It's such a great musical, and it's so uplifting, and I don't know. And I mean, it was a thrill to work on it, but I think even before I worked on it, it was, I think Billy is right up there. Yeah, right up there for me. It's special.
I would say it's one of my favorite captures. It makes me cry every time, and you can't go past that finale with the 20 different Billies.
Exactly. Yeah, that was fun.
It can be one of your own or someone else's, but do you have a favorite filmed live musical?
Yeah, it's not released though, Aladdin. So that's my favorite one we've done. Yeah, that's not released, but that one really did come together well. So yeah, everything we wanted to do, Disney allowed us to do, and we really sweated over that. And then we finished filming that, and then look, a few months after lockdown hit, so we post-produced that during lockdown, and got it absolutely right, because there literally was nothing else to be working on, because everything was shut down. So we had plenty of time to get that right. But it's good. It kind of captures the spirit and the fun and the comedy of it. And some of the original players from Broadway were in it as well, which was great. So amazing. Hopefully one day, or whenever that does come out, but that was my favorite. And Newsies was great fun as well. Like my memories of it was great fun to make. Like we just had a really great time making it, and the dancing is just spectacular. And the vibe on the set for that week was just really, really fun. Like it was and the audience were just insane. Like, and we shot that out in LA, and it was a big room, massive room. In fact, it's the room where Stop Making Sense was shot. So it was, it was
quite a full circle moment
which was fun. So yeah, that has good memories of, just because it was so much fun to make. Yeah.
Oh, I love both of those. Um, uh, where do you stand on bootlegs?
Oh, you mean something shot at the back of the room on a phone or something? Is that what you mean?
Mm.
Um, oh, I don't really have a very strong opinion. It kind of is what it is. I mean, if you end up watching it because there is literally no other recording of it, then I think you're probably a super fan to want to do that. It's a tough way to experience the show, obviously, if it doesn't sound very good.
Mm.
The thing is that with these things is that we're willing to put up with dodgy vision, but it's really, we don't really put up with dodgy audio. Like, we're so used to dodgy things being shot on a phone or whatever, but when the audio is not good, it's really hard to engage. And particularly,
Mm.
you're talking about a musical, which is like, it's music, you know everything. So it's hard to get past dodgy audio.
Mm.
So yeah. So I mean, I don't have a very strong opinion. It is what it is. Yeah.
What stage musicals do you wish had been filmed?
They're probably Hadestown.
Mm.
um, yeah. So I mean, we hope. I mean, that we were talking about that for some time as well, and I hope that maybe there's a chance in London that might get done, because that, I know I mentioned Billy as my favorite musical, but I'd say that Hadestown is right up there for me. I think the music is just so fantastic, like so fantastic, and the cast, the Broadway cast, had an X factor about it. That was lightning in a bottle, really. So that's the one that, I'm not saying it's the one that got away, but I think it's the one that needs to be done. Yeah,
Mm.
I think, yeah, that would be really exciting. Like, yeah.
Yeah. That gorgeous set is just, it's so
Oh,
spectacular,
it's a
and how they
gift.
use it, and the live musicians, all of it. It's just gorgeous.
Yep. Yep. It's
Mm.
really good work. Yep. And Rachel's direction on that is so sympathetic to the music, and the storytelling is just wonderful. And you kind of, and at the end you kind of know what the ending is, yet you're kind of willing to put up with it all again. That whole idea of, it's a tragedy, yet you're willing to relive that whole experience. It's just fantastic. Like, it's so emotional when he turns around and the just room goes black and everyone gasps, but they know it's coming. It's like, it's been telegraphed to us the entire time, yet we still are like, oh my God, that's
Yeah.
so good. Yes.
It's
It's
one of my favorite shows to usher, because the audience gasps 8 times a week, and it's that, and you hear that person who very clearly has missed their Greek mythology 101, and
yeah, yeah.
they hit like, no, there's like audible reactions.
Yeah, yeah.
Gets me every time. So aside from Hadestown, what would you like to see filmed in the future?
Oh, sorry, um is Frozen. I would like to see filmed,
Oh.
because it's really visually stunning. The London production, which I think, a lot of things have kind of got solved in a weird way in the London production, and
Hmm.
the it's really together, for want of a better phrase, in terms of how the comedy plays, how the relationships play, and everything is really landing. It's fun. Like, it's a fun musical. It's a big musical. You just got to let yourself go for it. The But it's really, it's fun to film, and we've filmed it a few times for short form work. Though we have full archives in the can as well, but we know what that can look like and sound
Mhm.
like. So maybe one day that will happen. Um, but yeah, that would be fun.
Oh, yes, please. And finally, where can we find you online?
So steammotionandsound.com is our website for what we do. So that will usually have whatever the latest things we're working on, probably a few months after we worked on them, but the I kind of usually posted up there on whatever is happening. So, I mean, we have a great team at Steam, and they're really talented people in post production, and the directors, and just our production management producers. So we really, I'm blessed to work with this team. So, and who have built, a great culture in terms of its relationship with theatre and producers and so forth. So, and we work independent. We're not aligned with any other companies or agencies or anything. We work for everyone. So, which is great. So, any agency or producers and so forth, which means we get to work with anyone, in the sense that we're not aligned with one particular agency group or anything. So, we're very lucky that way. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Brett. It's been really wonderful to go deep dive with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Louisa.
The Filmed Live Musicals podcast is created and edited by your host, Luisa Lyons. FilmedLiveMusicals.com is where musicals come home. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. A shout out and all the thank yous to our wonderful patrons: Josh Brandon, Geraldine Brewer, Belinda Broido, Andy Capone, Elliot Charles, Alexander Dolphin, Rachel Esteban, Mercedes Esteban Lyons, Hannah Graneman, James T. Lane, Alison Matthews, Al Monaco, David Negrin, Jesse Rubinowitz and Brenda Goodman, David and Catherine Rubinowitz, Joe Tilliston, and Beck Twist. Patrons generously provide financial support to preserve the history of filmed stage musicals and the creation of one easy place to find them all. If you would like to support this site, receive early access to this very podcast, and early access to site content, become a Filmed Live Musicals patron for as little as $3 a month. Visit filmedlivemusicals.com to learn more. If you like what you hear, please leave a review on Apple Music. It really helps to get the word out about the show. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks for listening.